Morning papers coming up and how they've covered, in fact, Gaddafi's death. Joining us this morning, diplomatic defence editor of the Financial Times, James Blitz, and Nabila Ramdani, a Middle East analyst. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us. And we have to warn you that some of the images on those front pages are pretty graphic this morning, as we've seen in our reports. I think we're going to start with the Mail, James, it's inside the paper you've gone for, page 6.
Oh, yeah, no, actually, I started off on something not quite so graphic, actually. It's the moment that Hillary Clinton heard, which you will see on
the international reaction.
Yeah, the international reaction. It's fascinating at moments like this to see how leaders respond. And actually, Hillary Clinton was seen on TV and, of course, was...
Yeah, I think we've got some footage on it, actually. Just stay, let's have a listen to and get that sound.
Tomorrow. Thanks.
Wow. Huh.
Unconfirmed.
Unconfirmed. Yeah.
Unconfirmed.
No.
What up?
Unconfirmed reports about Gaddafi being captured.
Oh, really?
Unconfirmed. Yeah. We've had too many. We've had a bunch of those before. We've had, you know, have had him captured a couple of times.
It's like a dish in the West Wing, isn't it? That's a proper wow.
A lot of the papers have gone on that. I think this year will be remembered, actually, for the two wows of Hillary Clinton. The first, of course, when she was watching the capture of Osama bin Laden. You'll remember in the famous photograph of everybody in the White House Situation Room and Hillary looking at the screen, astonished. And then secondly, there's the footage you've just seen, which lots of the papers have picked up. And it's interesting to see how, even for leaders at that level, this was a really big moment. Human reaction, a really big moment.
Yeah. Well, as we say, some of the images are pretty graphic this morning, Nabila. The Independent has gone with a montage from this. We think it's probably a mobile phone video footage, isn't it? End of a tyrant on the Independent.
Yeah, very much so. The front page documents very well, in fact, the different stages in the final hours, as it were, of Colonel Gaddafi, how he was captured alive, dragged and paraded through the streets of Sirte, his home city, like a war trophy. And shot dead by National Transitional Forces.
And it's quite important in terms of Arabic press then that these images are shown so that people can see for themselves what's actually happened, that sometimes they don't believe these reports until they see the image. That's why it's so graphic.
Yes, they are quite horrific pictures and indeed footage, but I think it's very important to have physical evidence of you know, documenting his end, as it were. It is very important to have tangible evidence and to be 100% sure that he's dead. And
the fact that the pictures tell a rather different story to what the NTC have said about this issue of crossfire and that he was just caught.
That's right. I mean, I think the story today for newspapers looking at how to take this on will be the difference between the NTC story and the evidence we've seen, which I think has also come out very strongly in the footage you're showing this morning, to a far greater degree than we saw last night. It's going to raise a lot of questions. I think an important question that needs clearing up is NATO's involvement. NATO appears to have been involved in attacking one of the convoys in which Gaddafi appears to have been. To what extent did they know that Gaddafi was there? Are they effectively complicit in this final attack on him? These are quite important questions for the meeting in Brussels today.
Yeah, James and Nabila, for the moment, thank you for that. Some of the stories we're talking about coming up next. Gaddafi, of course, actually dying in the city that he was born. We'll be looking at the importance of Sirte in this. And those reports that Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, may be fighting for his life. Back to the rest of those papers now. Joining us this morning, diplomatic defence editor of the FT, James Blitz, and Nabila Ramdani, Middle East analyst. Good morning once more and welcome.
Morning.
Let's turn to the Sun, because there's echoes of gotcha. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking. It's a gotcha moment for the Sun, and you can always rely on the Sun, I suppose, to go, you know, straight for the point, and that's for Lockerbie and for Yvonne Fletcher and IRA Semtex victims, will be the thought of many people getting their morning papers that, of course, today we've been looking at these graphic images of the lynching of Gaddafi, and many people will wonder how unseemly an end that was. But at the same time, a lot of people will also need to be reminded that behind this slightly buffoonish figure, he actually was responsible for an enormous amount of terrorism over the last 20 or 30 years, and that's the point they're trying to bring out.
Yeah, and perhaps a lot of people are rather uncomfortable with the sort of triumphalism almost on that front page. But the Times, Nabila, has looked at it in more detail and, in fact, reflected on others in Northern Ireland and Yvonne Fletcher, of course, of the embassy, the legacy of Gaddafi.
Yes. I think, although there is no doubt that he supported international terrorism during his time in power, I think there are still question marks remaining over the question of Lockerbie. An awful lot of people are convinced that al-Megrahi was just a scapegoat, and that includes the families of the victims of Lockerbie themselves.
Yeah, Jim Swire obviously wanted him to be put in court, to be questioned and put on trial. You interviewed Gaddafi, what, last September?
Last December, in fact, and at the time he told me that when Megrahi dies, he would make sure that he would personally sue the British government over al-Megrahi's imprisonment. He believed he was jailed for all the wrong reasons and he was ill-treated in prison. So that was quite a strong statement by Gaddafi at the time.
Despite the handshakes with Tony Blair in that Bedouin tent.
Indeed, indeed. And we've seen how his son, in fact, Saif Gaddafi, put an awful lot of effort in getting al-Megrahi released from prison. Yeah.
But Jim Swire and others cheated, of course, now over that. Let's go to your own paper now, the FT, James. Towards a new order in the Arab world. Of course, the political process begins now, and we will see if this is another dividend of the Arab Spring, I guess.
Yes, this is a comment piece by my colleague Rula Halaf, and I think she's bringing out here an important point which goes well beyond what we've been discussing over the last 24 hours, which is that we're coming up to the Egyptian elections on November the 28th. And those elections are actually, at the end of this momentous year, going to go a long way towards defining whether this Arab Spring is leading the Middle East towards a better, happier future, one which is more based on democracy and with a good balance of political powers, or whether we're going to see this resurgence of Islamic fundamentalism that many people fear, because the performance of the Muslim Brotherhood in those elections is going to be important. So while we're focusing today on Gaddafi going, we knew his regime was finished. The really significant thing in the next few weeks is going to be how those elections go.
And Nabila, the other issue, of course, which the Daily Mail picks up on, Gaddafi has gone, but still questions about the other members of the family, particularly Saif al-Islam, who we saw sort of popping up in Tripoli in that extraordinary scene when he was reported dead at that time.
Yes, there are conflicting reports about the state and indeed the location of Saif Gaddafi. Now, the Mail reports that he might, he's critically wounded and during a RAF bombing raid. Other reports highlight the fact that he's still alive, but at large. So we're not quite sure about his whereabouts and his state. But what's for sure is that he was at some point tipped by his father to be the heir, but not just by his father, including the British establishment who very much groomed him.
Nabila and James, thank you very much indeed for that. More, of course, from those papers a little later on.